Windows 11 has a couple of requirements that I find horrifically problematic.
Windows 11 might be the biggest mistake Microsoft has ever made. And it all started with one decision. Because the moment they forced AI into everything, users didn't just get annoyed. They started leaving. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly why people are abandoning Windows, what Microsoft got completely wrong, and why even their biggest partners are backing away. And yes, this is exactly why Windows 11 is starting to collapse. Let me ask you something. Have you ever right-clicked and suddenly AI pops up, or your computer feels slower, even though it's newer? That's not random. And in a second, you'll see exactly why this is happening. Microsoft said AI would make everything easier, but for most people, it just made everything more annoying. It's in the toolbar, it's in search, it's everywhere. And here's the weird part. Most people don't even use it. So why is it there? Well, that's where things start getting interesting, because the real reason has nothing to do with helping you. Here's what's really going on. And once you see this, you can't unsee it. At first, it looks like Microsoft just made some bad decisions. Too much AI, too many pop-ups, too many unnecessary changes. But none of that is random. What if all of this is actually part of a much bigger strategy? Because the moment you understand this, everything else starts to make sense. Microsoft didn't just update Windows. They quietly changed what Windows is. Before, your computer was a tool. You turned it on, used it, and it stayed out of your way. But now, it's becoming a platform. And there's a big difference. A tool works for you. A platform works for the company behind it. Now, this is where things get interesting. Microsoft started pushing something called AI PCs, not just better computers, a completely new category. But here's what most people missed. To even be part of this category, your computer needs a specific chip, an NPU. Don't worry about the name. Just understand this. If your computer doesn't have it, you're already left out. And once you make something required, you automatically exclude everything that came before. So now, even if your computer works perfectly, even if it does everything you need, it suddenly doesn't qualify. Not because it's slow, not because it's broken, but because it doesn't fit the new rules. And that changes everything. This wasn't really about improving your experience. It was about controlling the upgrade cycle. Because now, if you want the full experience, you don't just upgrade software, you need new hardware. And not just any hardware. Hardware that fits Microsoft's vision. And remember how we talked about AI being everywhere? This is why. Because once AI becomes the center of the system, everything else has to support it. Even if you don't use it, think about it like this. You have a perfectly good phone. It works. It does everything you need. And then suddenly the company says, if you want the new features, you need a new phone. Not because yours is broken, but because it's missing one small thing. That's exactly what's happening here. And this strategy only works if people actually want the new thing. But what happens when they don't? What happens when people look at AI and say, I don't need this? Or even worse, I don't trust this. Because that's exactly what started happening. And it leads directly to the next problem. The feature that made everything feel unsafe. And once you see how that feature works, you'll understand why this entire strategy started breaking. Now, this is where everything goes from annoying to serious. Because up until this point, you might be thinking, okay, maybe it's just bad design. But what I'm about to show you is the feature that completely changed how people see Windows 11. It's called recall. And on the surface, it sounds like a great idea. Imagine your computer has perfect memory. You can ask it, what was I doing last week? And it shows you exactly that moment. The file, the website, the conversation, everything. Sounds useful, right? But here's what's actually happening behind the scenes. Your computer is taking snapshots of everything you do. Not sometimes, not when you click a button, constantly. Every app you open, every message you read, every tab you visit, it's all being recorded. And this is where people started to feel uncomfortable, because it's not just remembering important things, it's remembering everything. And the moment you realize that, a simple question comes up. Wait, what exactly is being saved? Because it's not just documents or work files. It could be your emails, your private chats, things you search, things you type. Even if you delete them later, and suddenly this helpful memory doesn't feel so helpful anymore. It feels like something else. And here's the part that made it worse. Microsoft presented this as a feature you should trust, but they didn't clearly explain the risks up front, so people had to figure it out on their own, and when they did, the reaction was immediate, because this isn't just about convenience anymore. It's about how much of your digital life is being quietly stored in one place, and once that idea clicks, you start looking at your computer very differently, not as a tool, but as something that's watching everything you do. And that shift is what changed everything. But here's the real problem. It's not just that this data exists, it's what can happen to it. And once you understand that part, you'll see why people didn't just feel uncomfortable, they started to panic. And this is where things go from uncomfortable to actually dangerous. Because up until now, you might still think, okay, maybe it's not that bad. But this is the part most people didn't understand at first. It's not just that recall stores your data. It's how that data can be used once it exists. Let's make this really simple. Imagine you have all your personal information, your passwords, your messages, your private files, and instead of being spread out, it's all placed into one single folder. One place. Easy to search, easy to access. That's exactly what Recall is doing. And at first, Microsoft said, don't worry, it's stored locally on your device. But here's the problem with that. Local doesn't mean safe, because if something gets access to your computer, it gets access to everything. And this is where the real risk comes in. Malware doesn't need to hack 10 different accounts anymore. It just needs to access one place, and suddenly, your entire digital history is right there. Your conversations, your browsing, your personal data, all organized and ready to be taken. And the scary part is, this doesn't require some genius hacker. It just requires access. That's it. Because the hard work, organizing your data, indexing it, making it searchable, that part is already done by your own system. And once people realized that, the reaction changed completely. This wasn't seen as a helpful feature anymore. It was seen as a risk, a big one. Because instead of protecting your data, it concentrates it. And when you concentrate something valuable, you also make it a target. And that's the part that made people panic. Not just the feature itself, but what it represents. A system that quietly collects everything and asks you to trust that nothing will go wrong. But history shows something always goes wrong. And once that idea clicks, you stop asking, is this useful? And you start asking, why does this even exist? And when enough people start asking that question, that's when the real backlash begins. And this is where the story starts falling apart completely. Because once people realized what Recall was doing, the reaction wasn't mild annoyance. Security experts spoke up, developers spoke up, users spoke up, and everyone said the same thing. This is dangerous, it's too much. Microsoft had to respond, but the responses only made things worse. They delayed the feature, they added opt-in requirements, they changed the way data was stored. And even after all that, the trust was gone. Because when a company has to keep reversing a feature, people read that as a warning. And here's the thing, the backlash wasn't just about one feature. It was about the system itself. The realization hit slowly that Windows 11 wasn't just inconvenient, it was trying to change the relationship you had with your computer. A relationship that, for decades had been simple and private. And the proof was in the numbers. People weren't just upset, they were taking action. Some stopped upgrading entirely, others started rolling back to Windows 10. And that's exactly what makes this moment critical. When users begin leaving, when even IT departments and developers pause upgrades, that's a system failure. And this is where the open loop comes in, because the next chapter will show exactly how much damage this backlash caused to Microsoft's ecosystem, and why it isn't just a user problem, it's a business problem. And once you see those numbers, you'll understand why even partners like Dell started changing their entire strategy. This is where the story becomes undeniable. The proof is in the numbers. Microsoft wanted Windows 11 to take over. They expected everyone to upgrade quickly and leave Windows 10 behind. But the data tells a different story. In November 2025, Windows 11 had roughly 53.7% market share. Windows 10, 42.6%. That might seem fine at first, but by December, Windows 11 dropped to about 50.7%. Windows 10 climbed to 44.7%. People weren't just hesitating to upgrade, they were going backward. And this is the part that should have alarmed Microsoft the most, because when users actively reject your upgrade, it's not about features anymore, it's about trust. And the reasons are clear: the AI overload, the intrusive recall feature, the forced cloud connections, performance issues. All of it combined made people pause and question if Windows 11 was worth it. Some users even experienced upgrade loops. Tools meant to move them forward ended up forcing them back to Windows 10. And then there's hardware. Devices from 2016 to 2019 suddenly couldn't run Windows 11 properly. Not because they were slow, but because Microsoft set new barriers intentionally. The numbers make it clear Microsoft didn't just misjudge, they miscalculated entirely. And this isn't a small problem. This is the start of a trend that can impact their entire ecosystem. Users leaving one by one, IT departments pausing upgrades, developers reconsidering Windows as a primary platform, and in the next chapter, we'll see exactly how this shift started affecting companies, partners, and the way the market reacts, showing why Windows 11's story is bigger than just individual users. And if you're starting to see what's really going on here, you'll probably want to stick around, because it only gets worse from here. Here's the truth. It's not just one feature causing problems, it's everything combined. Windows 11 isn't just annoying because of AI or recall, it's the entire system. You're forced to create a Microsoft account just to get basic features. Cloud storage keeps popping up. Ads show up inside your own operating system. Performance drops, even on the same hardware. Little by little, it stops feeling like your computer and starts feeling like Microsoft's platform, something that's constantly watching, controlling, and guiding you. And this is exactly why people started looking for a way out. Because once your trust is gone, convenience doesn't matter anymore. You start thinking about alternatives. You start asking, do I really need this? Can I get something simpler, safer, or faster? And the options are easier than ever. Linux works out of the box. macOS is stable and predictable. Even Chromebooks are enough for a lot of users. Once people leave, they rarely come back. That's the big problem Microsoft faces. It's not just losing individual users, it's losing influence, control, and the default position in personal computing. And here's the open loop. In the next chapter, we'll see how even big companies and hardware partners started reacting to these problems, showing that Windows 11's issues aren't just individual, they're systemic. And this is where things get even more interesting, because once people started losing trust in Windows 11, they began looking for alternatives. And leaving Windows has never been easier. Linux is simpler than ever. It installs cleanly, recognizes your hardware automatically, and runs most applications without complicated setups. macOS is stable, predictable, and efficient. Professionals love it because it works without constant updates or intrusive pop-ups. Even Chromebooks are enough for a lot of users, especially those who want something simple and low maintenance. Once people switch, they rarely come back. And that's the real danger for Microsoft. It's not just losing users. It's losing the default platform, influence. The assumption that Windows is the go-to system, and it's not just personal users making the shift. Businesses, IT departments, and developers are also reconsidering Windows. When entire teams migrate workflows, it creates a ripple effect. And here's the open loop for the next chapter. The next part will show how even Microsoft's biggest partners started changing strategy, signaling that the Windows 11 story is bigger than any single user complaint. Because the biggest warning sign didn't come from users. It came from Microsoft's partners. Dell, one of the largest PC manufacturers in the world, spent an entire year pushing AI-first marketing. They promoted AI PCs as the future, making it the headline in every product announcement, every presentation, every ad. And then suddenly, they changed direction. They stopped making AI the main focus. They returned to what customers actually cared about: battery life, build quality, and display performance. They brought back familiar branding that people trusted. That shift sent a message. The AI first story wasn't working. And this isn't just about marketing. When your biggest partners pivot away from your strategy, it shows the product itself isn't meeting expectations. Companies like Dell watch consumer reactions closely. They see confusion, hesitation, and a lack of adoption. And when they adjust their messaging, it's a clear signal that the strategy has failed. And it doesn't stop there. Developers and IT departments also took note. They paused deployments, ran tests, and reconsidered Windows as a primary platform. This is the point where Windows 11 stopped being just a software issue. It became an ecosystem problem. Users leaving, partners adjusting, developers disengaging, entire companies reevaluating their tools. And here's the open loop. The next chapter will show the broader consequences, how this ripple effect spreads, and why it threatens not just Microsoft's user base, but its influence over the entire PC market. This isn't really about AI, it's about control. Windows used to be simple, you turned it on, and it worked for you. Now, it feels like it's working for someone else, collecting data, pushing services, trying to guide how you use your own computer, and that's the real shift. Not better technology, but a different philosophy. And when you change something that fundamental, people notice. So now the real question isn't, is Windows 11 bad? The real question is, how long can Microsoft keep going like this before more people leave? Because in the next video, I'm going to show you what people are switching to and why some of those alternatives might not be as safe as they seem.